I'm David Mason, the Director of Public Health for the town of Sandwich, and we are doing video number 4 for an explanation for the community on the WIIF funding request for May town meeting this year. I'll just note it's April 22nd. We had planned on having this done by Shawnee Pond, but it's a little breezy and cold out today, so we decided to make a run for it and into the studio. So we will have a picture up of Shawnee Pond, but not the nice backdrop that we were hoping for. And today we have with us Dave DeCanto, the Director of Natural Resources, and Dave Sampson from the Board of Selectmen, who has been involved in the Comprehensive Water Resource Management Plan and the development of the WIIF from the beginning. And we're going to speak specifically to the portion of the money being requested that will be used for the Shawnee Pond stormwater design and construction, and for an explanation of that and why we're targeting Shawnee Pond. And there is a ponds report that is on file, and Shawnee Pond's being targeted because it's one of the ponds in that study that's identified as being in a greater need of attention, I'll say, and we're looking at doing some design and construction of drainage from the streets and pulling them out of the ponds. And I guess we in discussing that, there's some resource issues there also, and that's why we have Dave DeCanto here. So thank you, Dave, for joining us today. And can you speak to Shawnee Ponds, the resource issues, and what's occurring in the pond, and what we've been seeing lately in the pond?
Sure. So in both upper and lower Shawnee Pond, because I'm not sure everybody knows there's an upper and lower, there's a beautiful earthen dam in between the two. Both ponds are used recreationally for fishing, for canoeing and kayaking, birding, quite a bit of activity as far as wildlife is concerned, a couple of beautiful areas. Also, we have a number of birds. We have swans, we have migrating ducks and other migratory birds throughout the year. And what we've been seeing over the years on both upper and lower Shawnee Pond is this issue with algal blooms that occur usually in the late summer. If you're not familiar with algal blooms, we're talking about phytoplankton. They're basically plants that live in the water, and they bloom just like your plants bloom because of sunlight and from warmth. And because of the amount of nutrients in the ponds, specifically over the years, from everything from fertilizers to laundry detergent, septic systems, both ponds have a high nutrient loading on them. And so when you get the right type of movement with the warmth and the sun, you'll have the blooms. And if you've ever seen the blooms, they can be very, very stinky. They bloom, they die, they go to the bottom, they deplete the ponds with dissolved oxygen, which makes it very difficult for any of the wildlife to live in it. It stinks to high heaven. You can walk by and think you're walking by a sewage treatment plant. It's so strong. And we're seeing a lot more of this because of climate change. So between the nutrients and climate change, unfortunately, we're probably going to see more algal blooms. The one nice thing in Sandwich we haven't seen in these ponds is we haven't seen the cyanobacteria algae for the blue-green algae that produces toxins that is dangerous to animals and people. We haven't seen that yet, but a lot of our surrounding towns have seen that.
So, and Dave, when I refer to Dave, we have 3 Daves here today. So I'll be using everyone's last name. So Dave Sampson, you've grown up in town, mm-hmm. and also as Dave DeCanto, and as far as the development over time for the CWRMP was focusing on water resources being ponds, because ponds are a great resource in this town, and with Shawnee Pond being downtown, I mean it's right there. It's kind of like the postcard picture for the town, and I mean the importance of protecting that, and what you've seen over time, and your support of the CWRMP and the WIIF. Can you speak to that?
Sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head as far as Shawnee Pond being a focal point of the town. We had conversations about this recently as it applies to the Deacon Eldred House, and many of us who've been in town for a long time or grew up in town, at least when I was a kid, the Deacon Eldred House in Shawnee Pond, that was the place where we went to illegally feed the ducks on a regular basis. And my mom would stop at the curb and she'd be like, "Okay, quick, feed the ducks. We got to get out of here." But preserving that as a focal point of the town and as a resource is really critical. And I think that anything around wastewater cleanup is not exciting. We've been talking about it for a long time, but as Dave DeCanto mentioned, we are starting to see the bigger impacts of what can happen and the dangers associated with that. And that happened right in town or adjacent to town last summer with Wakeby Pond, where the cryobacteria did start to surface. And that's the reason that we've been planning for this really for years. And I can't tell you how far back these discussions go. I've been involved for 5 years, but at the end of 2018, when at town meeting and in the following town election, we did establish the wastewater infrastructure fund, very similar to the CPA, where we're collecting a percentage of revenue on top of taxes specifically targeted for this purpose. So the money is set aside. We don't have to go out for any extra funding ask. That part's already been taken care of. And now we're moving towards making all of the planning and other efforts that have gone into this a reality and starting to mitigate fixing these problems, preventing them from becoming bigger problems. And I think the proof is really exists, right? The rubber is hitting the road. Barnstable has already reported the cryobacteria in one of their ponds this year. I don't know which one it is, but I saw that in the news a couple weeks ago. And this is scary stuff. And I think when these resources, these freshwater ponds and lakes that everybody enjoys so much, when they start to get the impacts of all of these different pollutants that are going into our groundwater, it really makes it a reality, and people are starting to understand that. So I think this is an easy one from a funding perspective. We've established the fund, it exists. This is really the ask here, and it's Article 6 at the upcoming annual town meeting. It's really an allocation. That's really where we're going here.
Very good. No, thank you for that explanation, Dave. And one of the things I just want to point out too, because both of you can comment on that, is we spent a lot of money over time on that lower dam and that herring run. And I mean, as far as one of the resources and the drives is always bring the herring back into the ponds and whatnot. So, I mean, there's a resource we're looking to protect also, because can you explain that as far as it has an economic impact, people coming to see the town, and then at the same time a resource that we're spending money on, but if we don't fix this problem, we're creating a bigger problem.
Right. So the Upper Sham Dam that I alluded to before, which you can access through Cook Farm, the parking lot is across from the Wing School. It's a beautiful piece of property. We spent over $1 million fixing that dam. It was in disrepair for over 45 years. There were no herring going into the upper pond for over 40 years. When we replaced it back in 2008, we reintroduced herring into the pond. We spent $75,000 just on the new run itself. But I know that since the herring were not there for 45 years, we're getting some fish up there, but not as many fish as I would like. And Division of Marine Fisheries has told us that if we go ahead with this study and we take a look at Upper Sham and the water quality there, that they would be able to use that information to help us get some fish. They would probably bring them over from Warren, restock the pond, and we have a much viable herring population there, which again, feeds a lot of other animals, and is one of the things that brings people. If you look, since we've put in the new herring run in the lower Sham Dam, which we did a couple of years ago, there's a nice little platform there, and I can't tell you how many people are always stopping and looking. They get water at the fountain, and it's almost a rite of passage. Okay, are there any fish in here? So it all ties together with the recreational use, with tourism, with the environmental factors that are there, and one impacts the other. So it's a domino effect.
Yeah, and as far as with those blooms, it depletes oxygen, and then the complaints start, because I think the selectmen were getting the complaints.
We've seen that one, and it makes it an unpleasant experience, and people are concerned. They don't know what the problem is.
Right.
Folks that are aware of it have some understanding, but still, I don't think people fully comprehend what's actually taking place here, and it's really going to take long-term planning and long-term work to keep this maintained on an ongoing basis and preserve those resources. It's about sustainability.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So, I'll just wrap it up with, we've done 4 videos thus far. The first one was just a little background history and a reminder of the WIIF and bringing forward the information of what's needed in town relative to wastewater and protection of resources. So the history of the town approving of that to this point. We've had a breakout of the components of the tasks that are being funded with the consultant with Ed Leonard. And we did a third video with Erin Perry and Bud Dunham regarding intermunicipal technical assistance, and we've wrapped it up today with the component, which is engineering and design and construction for Shawnee Pond. That's for the money being requested at May town meeting, and we're looking for your support, and we're looking to have you educated on that request. And I'll have Dave. Any final words on this, Dave? For anyone.
It's Dave.
Yeah, there we go.
Annual town meeting, May 3rd, Sandwich High School, 7 p.m. It'll be in the gymnasium in our COVID-friendly town meeting format, very safe environment. So we hope you can join us.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dave, and Dave.
Thank you.
So we'll talk to you later. Thank you.